Hello, my friends. I hope everybody's doing well. Happy spring for those of you that have warmer weather. It just started to get a little bit nicer here, but it's still kind of dreary and rainy on Cape Cod. Um, I wanted to bring up a couple things today, catch you guys up on some things that are happening. And this is going to be a two-part video, but first up, I just wanted to give a little wake-up call to the handpan community. And this can also be the RAV community by extension, but mostly the handpan community. Um, I've kind of watched this transition to the current space in the handpan world over the last 10 years. When I began with the handpan, it was just on the cusp of availability. And I got involved and I didn't really spend a lot of time going to events because I didn't have a ton of money back then. So I had an instrument, but I wasn't traveling all over the place. As my relationships grew, I was able to, get more instruments, be invited to perform places, and pretty much force myself into that world by teaching as many people as I could. I mean, I've been teaching for 10 years now, one-on-one lessons and group classes, and performing. So early on in the handpan world, I didn't have a ton of relationships. I knew particular people and sometimes important people in the handpan world, but I didn't know everybody and I wasn't a fixture in there. And initially, um, I found it to be unwelcoming and I did not feel like I was able to be a part of it because there was sort of gatekeeping in that community. And, now 10 years later, the dynamic has changed radically in terms of handpan availability. We're in a time where Chinese instruments are the predominant instruments, and I would have never in a million years thought that I would be able to buy a handpan tonight from any maker around the world. And myself, I could go back 10 years and tell myself, like, look what I have behind me. I never would have guessed that because you couldn't acquire a handpan then. Or you'd be waiting a very long time to acquire a handpan. So, now that we have handpans available, we're still operating under the logic of 10 or 15 years ago, and it's not going to work. And I think a lot of makers and a lot of players and a lot of people online are struggling with this transition. So I wanted to give a couple thoughts on sort of waking up the handpan community to the reality of now. So, reality check number one, tariffs aside, Chinese handpans are not going away. You may be for them, you may be against them. As a teacher, I'm very happy that more students are able to access handpans. As someone that hasn't been super wealthy and continues to not be super wealthy, I'm happy people can get handpans. You know, On the other hand, I'm empathetic to all of my handpan maker friends around the world, especially in Europe, where it's more common to have these big handpan shops that are rebranding Chinese instruments as sort of artisan brands. Um, those aren't going to go away. And we haven't hit the homeostasis level with Chinese instruments. And I do believe that we will, but it's still new that there's that many on the market. I think of makers like Luna Sound Sculptures, Oasis, or Veritas, who else? Sunpan, Taopan, and a million other ones as well. But makers that are going for very particular aesthetics, very particular sounds, those makers are going to do just fine. But we're in a handpan world where just the fact that you make a handpan is not going to make it sell. So, your instrument has to be seen in order to be desired by the public. So, reality check number two is related to that. If you are making handpans, or selling handpans for that matter as a reseller, unless people see them, and that means partnering with a musician like myself or a million other players, you have a million to choose from now, it's not going to be purchased until you have a reputation of this is a high quality instrument, there's a high trust relationship with this maker, or it's super unique and I want that sound. Now you can get a quality instrument for under $1,000. And there's a lot of even US makers that are selling instruments in that range. 1,200 is more common. So the prices have come down. And I think if makers are looking for strategies to increase their sales and, not compete, but sell instruments alongside the Chinese instruments, they need to partner with players. And if I was a maker and I was building all day, I would not want to be making videos of all of my instruments constantly and putting them up on social media. Jay from Nirvana, A plus for content creation. If I was working all day doing that, I wouldn't have the energy to do as much content as you do. So that's a great example of marketing there. But part of my success is I have partnered with a bunch of handpan makers to perform on their instruments and to teach on their instruments and visually put content out using them. So for a lot of makers, that's been very fruitful, because unless your instrument is being pumped onto social media, someone's going to see an Amazon handpan before they see yours. And that's true even for the highest quality instruments, because if you're not in the community yet, you're not going to see the ones that we would all consider really high quality instruments. So that's number two. Pair with players, performers, and people that are willing to help put the instrument out into the world, or do it yourself if you have the energy, but I wouldn't. The other reality check number three, Chinese instruments are great quality now. This does not mean every Chinese instrument is great quality. Obviously, a $100 Temu pan might be okay for a child or something, but you can get a quality instrument from China. Companies like Mr. Pan are putting time into making an instrument. And it doesn't mean that because it's from China, it's a bad quality instrument. I have a couple friends that work in the Chinese handpan market who are tuners, I consider some of the best tuners in the world. And I have many of their instruments behind me. And, just because they're there doesn't mean that the instrument's bad quality. The reality is, yes, Chinese instruments were bad, not even that long ago. Now you can get quality instruments, but again, it's the relationship with the maker that is really important. There's still the problem of makers not wanting to tune Chinese instruments because some of them really are low quality. So that's another dynamic. If a maker really wanted to have an interesting strategy, you could offer retunes for Chinese instruments and, agree to engrave your name on it on the inside or whatever it is for you. But you're not misrepresenting the quality of that instrument. But as somebody that owns 70 handpans now, this is absurd. I know I feel like gluttonous having this many, but it's for lessons. I have a lot of Chinese instruments and they're still in tune. I have a 5-year-old Chinese instrument that is a performance instrument of mine and it's perfectly in tune. So we need to smash the delusion that every Chinese instrument's bad. It's not true. Next thought is welcoming new players into the community. If we're hoping to expand our reach, one strategy we can take is accepting players with the instrument they have. If every time I got a new student, and I have 30 weekly students, and it's always swapping in and out, but I've made it a rule for myself that no matter what instrument people have, unless they ask me the quality of their instrument, I'm not going to mention it. And if it's horribly out of tune, I might be like, oh, maybe my friend, this tuner, can retune it for you. But unless someone's asking for your opinion, no one cares. No one cares what your opinion is. And because you have one handpan or because you have a strong voice on social media, that doesn't mean you have anything to say. The reality is that performers that are professional musicians like myself, people that are teaching for a living, people in the yoga and meditation space, those people are not being rude to people that have instruments that are low quality. None of us have the time to do that. And it's people online that are speaking the loudest that have the least to say. And so to anybody watching this who is a new player, just ignore those people. It's not productive, it's not useful, and it's not representative of the type of handpan community that myself, Dan Mulqueen, Amy Naylor, Rosie, and Miguel, a million other players are hoping to foster. Handpan is not a spiritual instrument. It's a musical instrument like the guitar or the piano. And if we remove all of this spirituality stuff, all of the I'm special if I play handpan feeling from this, I think that we can start to look at it as it's an instrument we all like. And unless somebody says, how is this instrument? If someone posts posts on the handpan music page on Facebook, it's like, oh, check out this amazing instrument, and they play a song, and you say, that's a piece of junk from China. It's going to come out of tune in a month. Get a real instrument. And there's iterations of that. There's more spiritual ways that people try to couch their annoyance. That's not useful. If someone had said that to me when I had my first handpan, which was an absolute piece of junk 10 years ago, absolute piece of junk by today's standards, any Chinese instrument is better than my instrument from Italy when I first started to play. If I had had any of those instruments and someone said that to me, I'd just be like, forget these people. And that's not the community I want. And I don't think that's the community that any of the people that are doing this professionally want. And I think we need to snuff out the voices of people that are speaking like that. And by that, I mean, we just show that there's another side. They can have their opinions. People can be upset. You can be rude. That's your choice. That's the internet. But I think it's important that players like myself and others that feel this way speak up more and stop people from behaving like that. There's no reason for it. It's a handpan. You can have an opinion, but get over yourself. If someone's not asking for your opinion, don't give it. No one cares. If I wanted to take the high road and be a jerk, I have plenty of experience here. I could spend my entire day arguing with people online who claim to have insight into handpans because they own a handpan. And I would waste my life doing that. It doesn't matter. But when people ask me, because I'm a resource for information, I'm happy to talk about it. But I'm not doing it because I need to show I'm the one that's the expert here. I'm knowledgeable. That's not a healthy way of approaching it. So accepting people with the instruments they have is going to drastically increase the number of people at events, at performances, in lessons for people like me. That should be happening. We have a quadruple or more the number of players we had before. So our event should be massive in Europe and massive in the US. And it's the negative behavior of these loud, obnoxious voices that are shying people away. Even I myself, when I first got involved in the handpan world, had a negative experience. I'm not going to bring all that up again. But that even made me in the beginning be like, what are their problems? I think there's a fear of the transition from I'm special because I have a handpan and because it's a unique, rare instrument to everybody has a handpan. And I get that. I still try to hold on to the magic of the instruments that I find special. And through teaching, I get to experience that every day. And I'm really grateful for that. But I think we need to remove that exclusivity sort of club feeling and start inviting more people in. And our community will do so much better. We'll be able to show makers, order from Rebecca at Spirit Handpans, order from, Sebastian at Luna Handpans. We'll be able to make recommendations when we bring people into the fold. But if we start the relationship with, you're wrong that you purchased this instrument, they're not going to stick around. They're not going to come to events. They're not going to do lessons. It's shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that. So encourage relationship and connect and educate through connecting with people rather than trying to bolster your own ego and show that you're an expert. No one cares, The final reality check is eventually all of this is going to come to a homeostasis, whether we help to guide that homeostasis or it fizzles out and handpans become less popular because they're commodified. Or we create a community that is always growing, has a respect for tradition, and I'm very interested in the tradition of handpans and the history of handpans, and I really want to preserve that. And I know Rebecca at Spirit Handpan has started a sort of like a handpan stories um, conversation, and I think it's so important to remember history because the new players don't know. We may have been around to see the transition, but if you've started in the last 5 years, you have no clue who Terrapan is, or Sunpans, or Bell Arts, Lewis's early instruments. So I think we can enrich the playing and the experience of new players by wanting to share that history. And part of my progress as a player and as a teacher, I'm a teacher by trade. I went to school for high school education. Part of my desire is to give value to old instruments by talking about their history. And handpans are such a unique storyline that happened in such a narrow period of time that I don't want the bitterness of this current era to ruin the long-term narrative that people are going to hold with this instrument in the future. So we really have an opportunity to redirect away from that behavior and, make it better for all of us. And I want to really encourage people, musicians like myself, teachers, um, however you use the handpan, greet people where they're at and don't expect them to know as much as you. And fold them into the origami paper that is the handpan world. And there's a lot of folding to do still. And it's annoying and it can be frustrating and it's repetitive. But if we're going to take the time to interact with people, try your best to engage with them in a productive way. So I hope these made sense. And I do encourage anybody that has any thoughts, put it below here. But I really hope that we're able to shift our thinking around this and, not use these instruments to be better than other people or to be more special or, you know, let people play how they're going to play. Let them learn how they're going to learn. Let them learn as they're going to and provide help when asked. I think that's the main takeaway from Facebook. Um, and final thought, I really do wish that we could make a new handpan forum. I found that that had all the same dramas as Facebook, but it was a little bit better, I would say. I was talking to Ray Ford over the weekend at Pantasia, and I think it's something to do with Facebook itself, that it encourages this type of speech and this type of behavior. And we don't need to be like that. You know, this is the instrument that we love. Like why are we focusing on being annoyed when we already have an in with the people we're talking to because we all like the handpan? So be kind, be respectful, and let me know your thoughts below. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with you over the next 20 years of performing and teaching on the handpan. Talk to you guys soon.